Hello and welcome to Straight Talk from Washington, D.C. I'm Ismail Jalilov, and thank you again for joining us today. I truly hope you will find this content interesting, and if you do, please do share it with your networks because we could, frankly, benefit from more people watching us and knowing about us. We normally don't speak English. We usually provide Russian and Azerbaijani language content, and we broadcast into the South Caucasus. But with time, we grew, and now we have audience all over Eurasia, and frankly, in places that I never thought people would be watching us. So I do appreciate my audience's efforts to make us grow, and thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, today we invited Ahmad Alili, someone I've been watching for a while, although we have never met. We just met virtually a minute ago during the sound check. He is a director of the Caucasus Policy Analysis Center, researcher in international public policy and regional security in the South Caucasus. Also, he wanted me to mention that he's a participant in peace-building initiatives. Of course, we're going to try to talk about the situation in South Caucasus, what's going on Lachin Road in Azerbaijan, what's going on with the Armenian community living in Karabakh, put the situation and the events in a geopolitical context, because I do understand there's a lot of misinformation flying around in both directions. We will try, as always, we will try to get to the truth and something most approximating the truth. I know that the truth is in the eye of the beholder, and sometimes we don't want to believe what we know. We'll try to make an exception today and discuss the situation from within. We do want to know what the Azerbaijani government thinks about what's going on in the region. We do have quite often we do have guests representing the civil society in Azerbaijan and the public, not the public sector in the American sense of the word, but the public sector in the European sense of the word. In America, when we say public sector, we usually mean the government. So the government's voice has been absent mostly in these discussions, and we would like to reach out to them once again and invite them. We will be fair to them. We will ask tough questions, as we always do, but we will be fair. It is quite unfortunate that we have more access to the Armenian speakers, Armenian observers, Armenian politicians even, than we do to our own Azerbaijani government. Ahmed, welcome and thank you for coming today.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Looking forward to interesting questions and interesting discussions.
Well, interesting questions I cannot promise, but we'll rely mostly on our audience to ask those. All right, let's start with the very beginning. What's going on Lachin Road? How long has it been going on? And what is the message there? What are the Armenians of Karabakh supposed to think of the actions that are, if not organized, I know that the Azerbaijani government doesn't like to say it's organized these events, but condones, allows them to continue. What are the Armenians to understand of what's going on? How are, is that indicative of how Azerbaijanis will be treating them when, you know, the hostilities are over and they become Azerbaijani citizens?
Okay, yeah, truly what's happening right now, it's one of the biggest blows to the confidence building measures because we believe that Lachin humanitarian corridor was one of the biggest confidence building measures between Armenia and Azerbaijan. When Azerbaijan allowed this humanitarian corridor to take place, it was a definite signal saying that, look, I want to go that extra mile for Karabakh Armenians. I want to create all the conditions for them to have connection with the Armenians, and I'm going to do something special for them, a bit different something for them. So that was one of the biggest confidence building measures. For the last 2 months and 4 days already, we see that this confidence building measure is waning away. So it is disappearing. How it started, there are Azerbaijani narratives, Armenian narratives, but I'm sure that Azerbaijani demand on transparency is a legitimate one, and by the international platforms and international expert community, it also sees it as a legitimate one, because once Azerbaijan demands more transparency over the cargo passing through the humanitarian corridor. And in this context, I believe that if we can ensure that there is more humanitarian, let's say, cargo passing through this cargo, and somehow filter out non-humanitarian cargoes, so it might resolve a lot of problems. In one of the meetings, we even proposed that, well, if the European civilian mission is taking part in the region, the European civilian mission can be the one that's going to filter that humanitarian cargo from non-humanitarian. Let's see how we're going to move forward with that idea. So, but actually, like, your question had many components, so I'm going to try to get the bit by, from each component. Second issue: should Karabakh Armenians trust Azerbaijan after that, etc.? My frank answer to this issue that I don't know what's the agenda in Armenia, and my understanding, my participation in the peace building projects for the last 15 years, it always was like more about what is the difference between the Armenian agenda, Karabakh Armenian agenda, and diaspora agenda. And these days, I am asking that question about mostly about Pashinyan administration agenda. So to what context we should review Pashinyan administration policy on the certain issue, and let's say all the existing establishments. So in that context, it's hard for me even to filter out the diaspora agenda from the Armenian agenda on many issues. So then when somebody asks me like what's the Karabakh Armenians agenda on the issue, it's a bit hard question to me.
But forgive me for 1 second. Who do you think represents the desires of the Armenian people better? Is that the Pashinyan government because it came to power as a result of a referendum, a second election? Forgive me. Is it the Armenian diaspora in Russia? Is it the Armenian diaspora in the United States? Who speaks for the Armenians of Karabakh and Armenians in Armenia?
Oh, that's the question. I believe that we see that quite the tension between the diaspora and administration, Pashinyan administration. You cannot hide that. Even I would say that in many cases you would see that those expert community representatives, even like who came to the fame during the Sergey Lavrovs and Robert Kocharyan, the more established community of NGO reps, civil society reps, they are a bit different than Pashinyan administration. So that is why who represents them, it's also another hard question. But I can tell you like that with you interviewed Sergey Lavrovs last year, he had excellent in one of the interviews, he said quite an excellent description. He presented quite an excellent description on that, saying that being an Armenian in Armenia is a full-time job. So that explains a lot. So if you are Armenian in Russia or in the United States, in France, or in Europe, you can be quite focused on the national agenda on Sundays and Saturdays. On Monday, you can go back to your business as usual and work there. But if you are Armenian in Armenia, whatever you are going to criticize Azerbaijanis and Turks and Sundays and Monday, remember the past grievances. But on the Monday, you have to go back and talk to those people, work with them, do some business with them, live as neighbors. So that is why the concerns of the Armenians and the concerns of the diaspora Armenians, be it in Russia, in the United States, is completely different. And especially the concerns of the Karabakh Armenians. In Karabakh, there are people who left Baku in early 1990s and settled down in Karabakh. When you talk to them, their concerns are completely different. their attitude
Have
to
you
the
talked
issues.
to them? I'm sorry, I apologize because I don't know much about your work. Have you met with Armenians in Karabakh? Have they told you
Yeah,
what they
sure.
want?
I cannot name anyone, but yes, I have met
Okay.
like on various international platforms, and we discussed quite many and interesting topics. But frankly speaking, it's up to those people to talk about the details of those discussions. But I had a chance to learn more about their concerns, to speak with them, try to create a empathy feeling, because that's what you do, right? If you want to understand the other side, you have to understand the concerns, and that's what we are doing. So in that sense, yes, I had a talk, and I believe that even their concerns are a bit different than Karabakh, or I would say the other Karabakh Armenians' concerns, like the people who lived in Baku and now living in Karabakh, their attitude is a bit different. And but one important thing, I have to mention it, that sometimes there are so many specific moments in Armenian-Azerbaijan relations that Armenians and Azerbaijanis, the number of the rate of the intermarriages between these two communities during Soviet times were one of the highest. So these people were like the mentally, in terms of how they live, they are very close to each other. And so that is why there are certain issues that at some level, like it's going to be hard for the a bit outsiders to understand, like the certain limits of those issues. Even for me, it's hard. But there are so many specific moments in Armenian and Azerbaijan relations, and one of them, I would say that one of the examples is Vitaly Balasanyan. Even like I talked to a few people from Armenia. I would say that I talked to diaspora members about him also. One even from Russia, one even from France. We discussed those issues, and all of them they were a bit surprised that Baku mentions name of Vitaly Balasanyan much more than the name of anyone else. And the Vitaly Balasan is the person who did take action during the Khojalı massacre. And he said that how we can, and from Armenian perspective, Vitaly Balasanyan is very much close to Robert Kocharian and Sergey Sargsyan. How come Azerbaijan put him like the prefer him to someone else? My answer back then was that yes, he did that, all of those. So in Baku, people remember that, but also there is this case that he was friend of Allahverdi Bagirov, and when Allahverdi Bagirov
Who is
died,
that? I don't know who that is. Who is that?
oh, okay, it's a national hero of Azerbaijan, but he used to be coach for the Karabakh football team in Arda. So in the early days of the war, when the people who had a certain authority in communities, they would get the young male people around themselves and organize certain, let's say, defense battalions. And Allahverdi Bagirov was one of them. And he's very prominent in his role that he could. There were a lot of hostages after Khojalı massacre. His personality played a great role in talks with his Armenian counterparts, and so that he can get them. So that person was killed. Allahverdi Bagirov was killed during the war, and his grave is in Ardam. So when you enter Ardam cemetery, all graves are digged out, but Allahverdi Bagirov grave. So that is there. So even like before the war of 2020 war, Karabakh war, we in peace building projects we would show that some positive message that look that all friendships matter. So the Vitaly Balasanyan was the reason why that grave was there and stayed there. So it was kind of like in Caucasus there is a certain, let's say, call it a manship. I don't know how to translate it to the English, but there is a very, very like traditional understanding of the code of the behavior. Sorry for like that. I have to say that, and by that kind of actions, Azerbaijan sees and tries to distinct certain people. So this was an example of to show that how Armenian and Azerbaijan relations are specific to the all logical, let's say, all logical rules demand that Baku should hate Vitaly Balasanyan much more than anyone else. But there are certain actions that put certain people to some positions that Baku favors them. So that's why, again, Azerbaijan and Armenian relations are much more specific, and I don't think that should be compared to the relations to any other ethnic groups in the wider region.
Okay, if we're trying to build a rule of law in the country, in Azerbaijan, for all Azerbaijanis, that would include Armenians living in Karabakh. Let me ask you this. Does the fact that, let's say, Vitaly Balasanyan prevented his, brethren from desecrating one grave of somebody who's already dead, does it negate in any way, make it easier for Azerbaijan to forgive his possible role in killing other Azerbaijanis? I'm trying to understand that. And from what you're saying, maybe, I apologize, maybe I misunderstood you. But does it mean that the government of Azerbaijan is ready to forgive some Armenians for killing Azerbaijanis, but not the others?
No, it's not the case. This example was provided to show that when we try to understand Karabakh Armenians' agenda, when we try to understand the wider agenda in the region, there are so many specific moments that you cannot use the same attitude that you are using to another. Okay. But specifically going back to your question, like the addressing that issue, I would say that no, in Baku people remember that, but also when they put them, let's say, create a scale that one, like the certain actions that shows that a person can be, is a bit different. So nobody forgets what was done. Nobody, like this transitional justice should take place. It's there, but also at the same time, let's say that positive moment, they are not going to be ignored. So that is the message in this story, not saying that somebody is going to think that. But right. I believe that. Yes, sorry.
Yes, I was going to say Anik James Krikorian, who was our guest a couple of weeks ago, he says, ironically, a criminal case has just been opened in Karabakh against Balasanyan. Charges are not yet known, but could be part of the internal dispute there. Let me ask you this. We're talking about the events on Lachin Road, which I will ask you to describe what's going on at the very, the latest information from there. But let me ask you this. If there are some Armenians in Karabakh, as you say, those who moved from Baku and live in Armenia, and they're much more sympathetic to and empathetic to the message coming from Baku, and if there are some people in Karabakh who are arguing that, yes, we have to lay down the weapons and live as part of Azerbaijan, what Azerbaijan is doing on Lachin Road right now, what the government is allowing to happen, I'm not saying it's directly organizing the event. I have no proof, but it looks to me like the Azerbaijani government is allowing it to happen. Does that not undermine the very same voices among the Armenians in Karabakh who are saying we should start being friends with them instead of being enemies?
Well, okay. Let me, in order to answer that question, let's talk about what's happened recently in Lachin Road or the developments happening in Karabakh, and I believe that within that context, I am going to be able to answer that question also.
Okay.
Look, Vardan is back, and I believe that, and the general assumption is that he left Karabakh, and now he's back.
But did people expect that he was not coming back? Wasn't it clear that he went to Moscow to receive more orders? Did you really think he was leaving forever?
Okay, so that's the thing. Like, if frankly speaking, I don't believe that he left Karabakh for some consultation with some people in Moscow. I don't think so. There can be several explanations of that. First of all, I believe that the person who is in charge in Karabakh is General Volkov, not Ruben Vardanyan, not Arek Artunian, not Vitaly Balasan or anyone else. The person who is in charge in Karabakh in all areas, it is General Volkov. So that is why his messages towards the Vardanian from Moscow should have been enough. So if he left Karabakh and then came back, most probably, I believe that those interest groups that were interested in doing some business with Azerbaijan in Moscow, they probably took him out. But after some time, some interest groups, let's say some interest groups in Kremlin, they decided to put him back. So that looks like some struggle going on between them also. But for me personally, my personal assumption is that he was in Karabakh all this time. What we know that he was gone for some time, and then he came back. And we also know that he attended and one of the meetings through Zoom, etc. So most probably I can assume that there was some problem within Karabakh Armenians. And there might be people accusing Vardanian on many, let's say, negative developments taking place between Baku and Karabakh Armenians. Because before Vardanian, Baku was talking to Karabakh Armenians, and once Vardanian came in, that contact stopped. So I assume that it's natural that somebody within Karabakh, they assume that like if Vardanian is a danger for the community, Karabakh Armenians, so there might be some struggle going on in Karabakh. So, and I believe that he was feeling a bit, let's say, not safe. So what he did right after coming back, he opened a criminal case against Vitaly Balasanyan. So again, as Onik mentioned, the charges are not known, but the criminal case is out there. Probably he was afraid that there's something might come from the people who support Vitaly Balasanyan. And also Ruben Vardanyan, he's looking for some higher status for itself. He wants to be called a president. So that is why they are changing the legislation, trying to adopt a find of ways how to make sure that the Karabakh Armenians leader is elected by the local gatherings, local parliament. So that's how he wants to get a new status for itself. Apparently, the status that he's feeling that he has now, it's not enough for his personal security, or he wants some higher status. So this is my assumptions are right. I would say that shows that there are quite within the Karabakh Armenians there is some struggle, and some even believe that without Vardanyan they can talk and with Baku on much more issues than with Vardanyan. So I believe that, and we should not forget.
I'm sorry for me. Yes, okay, go ahead, please.
One sentence. We should not forget that in late 1980s, 87, 88, 89, there were quite a large amount of the people in Karabakh, they were in support of the Baku's vision about the issue. So if you go back and analyze the very first days of how the conflict came back, there were quite a large number of the Karabakh Armenians who were supporting Azerbaijan narrative on the issues. Those voices were silenced. So saying that there is a unified position among Karabakh Armenians in this issue, it would be a bit naive. So that is why I believe that even within the Karabakh Armenians, I would not say that there is only one voice and that's it. So that is why it is very let's say a tricky question. Like, we're talking about something that we usually a researcher, in order to talk about those issues, it has to have at least a newspaper opinion survey, right? I'm not talking about the sociological surveys, but we don't have that, so we are guessing certain issues, frankly speaking. Okay. So sorry, yes.
Yeah, I was going to ask. So, to summarize, to make sure I understand what you said correctly, Azerbaijan is staging these protests right now, or allowing them to happen, because Azerbaijan is becoming part of internal divisions and internal power struggle that is going on within Karabakh. So Vardanyan is someone Azerbaijan does not at all, under any circumstances, wants to talk to or tolerate in Karabakh. Which brings me to the question: what is the level of relations between Azerbaijan and Russia? The governments of Azerbaijan and Russia, how close are they to each other? Because we're getting the picture that they're allies and friends and everything is peachy and wonderful. But on the other hand, you're saying General Volkov is someone who is in charge. The Russian, I don't know his official title, but in the Tsarist times they call him General Governor. So Volkov is in charge. Kremlin sends back Ruben Vardanyan. Is that Putin? What forces within the Russian government want to see him there? Is that President Putin, with whom Aliyev says he has wonderful relations? Or is it some other, let's say, tower of the Kremlin? Who is sending Vardanyan back? Who is not removing him from Karabakh?
So again, that's the part of the question. Again, so many questions, and I can talk about each question for hours, frankly speaking.
Yes, so we only have an hour, so let's try. I understand I ask multiple questions, but I want you to understand the context of what I'm asking and why I'm asking what I'm asking. That's why I grouped the questions together, please.
Yeah, okay. Azerbaijan-Russian relations. The thing is, what is happening in Lachin Road right now, it's definitely element of the Azerbaijan-Russian relations. It's not about the relations between Yerevan and Baku. It is something Moscow definitely doesn't want to see there. And when people say that there is some cooperation between Moscow and Baku on this issue, I have nothing left but to smile, frankly speaking, because now Russia is losing a big time in terms of the reputation in Karabakh. We're doing nothing in Lachin Road. Russia is losing big time. So that is why it shows that there is quite a tense times right now. But I can predict that certain things might change. Baku and Moscow might stand a bit closer these days. It has nothing to do with Karabakh. Let's talk about the geopolitical component right now. What is happening in Turkey with the earthquake happening in Turkey? Suddenly we saw a lot of beautiful and positive moments when Armenia sent the first aid and the Greece sent the first aid. The Greece TVs, they played a song about how they love Turkey. This all, from the peace-building perspective, these all are great.
Is it politics? Is it for show, or is it genuine, do you think?
You want me to talk about the politics part? Look, there is a genuine component and the political part in there. So no matter what, look, Greece playing a song, I believe you know the story of that song, what that song means. You have any idea why that song matters in this context?
I haven't heard the song, so it's hard for me to say. I'm sorry.
Okay, let me give you a brief story, and then I'm going to come back Azerbaijan-Russian relations and the why it matters. The thing is, when in 1974 there was a crisis between Turkey and Greece, or with Greece and Turkey over the Cyprus island. The Turks on the Cyprus, they would openly make appeal to Turkey for help, but back then Turkey would be restrained because it was a member of NATO. It didn't want to act independently, so there was a lot of consultations. So Turkey hesitated a bit. So when the Turkey hesitated for a few days, back then Greece radio stations, they would play a song about the lover who waits for his lover who is not coming, who did not show up. So that was the Greece radios back then playing it to the Turks in Cyprus island. And then when Turkey decided that it's going to send the troops, a few hours prior to the troops landing the music that played in all Cyprus TV, Turkish radios, etc., it was about a lover singing that I can come overnight and without telling anyone. Which in Turkish sounds like bir gece ansızın gelebiliriz. This is the famous phrase.
Sounds like a threat. Okay, I understand. Yeah.
Exactly. This is the phrase President Erdogan used recently, like a few months ago. It became a big thing like that because it was just a historical flashback to the past. Now, Greece TVs, they are playing a song saying that we love you, Turkey, right? So this what is happening there? It's beautiful in terms of the peace building, and it has quite a positive moments in that, and there's some historical, let's say, flashbacks. So what is happening with Turkey right now is excellent, but from Azerbaijan perspective, it seems that there is an attempt to decouple Ankara from Baku. So up to this moment, the things were that Baku and Ankara would have the same front. Ankara would say that I am going to follow. Is it clear? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, but I'm honestly lost in this allegory. I understand what you're saying, that there are attempts to decouple Azerbaijan from Turkey. I just don't understand how Greece is that important in this context. And if we could, can we go back to why is Vardanyan back in Karabakh?
No. Sorry, like that. My screen froze, so that's why I saw that the connection is lost. So that is why I mentioned that. Can you? So what is happening with Greece in this context? There is also in Armenia. So there is a feeling that there is the process decoupling Turkey from Azerbaijan takes place. 2 days ago, President Aliyev made a call to President Putin. So there was a certain talks going on probably on many issues. So it can be result of that if Turkey takes a bit, let's say, Turkey becomes less, Turkey and Azerbaijan, they are not going to have the same front. So Azerbaijan-Russian relations might get a bit closer. So that's what I would try to explain to you. But then the questions like that, there were so many questions that we had to jump to that. Sorry about the talking about
That's fine.
like about the yes.
That's fine. So let me go back to the questions. Why is Vardanyan back in Karabakh? Do you think it's Putin's idea? Putin is behind it? Do you think another Kremlin tower? Because when we're talking about some forces in Russia, it would be very interesting to know who are these forces? What do people in Baku think?
Well, frankly speaking, again, if Ruben Vardanyan left Karabakh and then came back, so again, I don't believe that. I believe that he was in Karabakh, but in hide for some time. Probably he felt a bit not that secure, but he left and they came back. We can assume that there is this struggle, and some groups in Moscow, they want him back. So these groups might be usually in Azerbaijan, when this kind of things they take place, usually MFA people, they are accused. There is the things that, so why usually there is a reference to the personal relations between Azerbaijan and Russian presidents, because usually there is a like when you say Russia, you also mean Lavrov. And what Lavrov did during the 2011 Kazan meeting, it hurt the peace process back then. So many people, they don't like Lavrov at all. So once something negative takes place in this context that hurts the overall peace process, and the steps are taken from someone from Moscow, it's usually Azerbaijan tends to blame MFA wing. And I believe that in this context, we can assume that these people, they don't want to lose. MFA doesn't want to lose. It is let's say the Vardan is a good tool for MFA to manipulate the situation.
So MFA, you mean the Russian Foreign Ministry, right? Ministry of Foreign
Yes,
Affairs.
Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Okay. So if we're talking for a second, okay, let's talk about the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. What do you make of Lavrov's recent unprompted, in my opinion, tirade about, Azerbaijan rightfully deoccupying its lands, something that outwardly was met with criticism in Armenia and even anger and vitriol in the Armenian sphere. But on the other hand, are Armenians so unhappy since Lavrov talked about those 7 regions but did not mention the rest of the Armenian-controlled Karabakh? Is that a game, do you think? Why would Lavrov talk about it unexpectedly in an interview with Kisilov? I'm pretty sure you... was it Kisilov? It was Kisilov. I'm sure you're aware of that interview. Was that a surprise? And does that mean that Russia has a very strict division in the way it views the 7 liberated areas and what Armenians are currently controlling in Karabakh?
What Russians are currently controlling. So let's be precise on that issue also. So yeah, I believe that that's the, if we are saying that what's happening right now is between Russia and Moscow and Baku, we have to be precise on that issue also. So Lavrov's interview, this was quite an interesting interview, but frankly speaking, I believe that it was mostly signaling that, okay, what about Azerbaijan? Azerbaijan is right about those 7 regions, but the what is left, it's not, the same rules should not be applied to the rest of the territory. And it's long-term game for Russia to establish its presence in Karabakh, to justify its presence in Karabakh. That now that there is a clear signal from Baku about Baku's intentions to ask Russian troops to leave Karabakh by like 2025, I believe that now Russia is looking for other ways, other justifications to keep its presence in the region. So Sergey Lavrov's speech, it was all about how to justify it. So, but at the same time, he had to be taken as someone neutral from Baku, from Baku's side, someone who is saying something nice words about Baku also, so that it can keep in the process. So that's why he said a few words. And frankly speaking, I don't understand the reaction from the our Armenian counterparts, because in essence, it favors what Armenia says much more than what Azerbaijan says. So so that is why I believe that it's criticism toward Lavrov. It's the general mood in Armenia right now. It's not about that interview. If you analyze the interview itself, there is quite interesting moments that it definitely works against Azerbaijan than Armenia.
All right. For a second, let's continue this Russia thing, since we're talking about it. Given Russia's history with Azerbaijan in particular, I'm not going to repeat all the key points of our narratives, although they should be repeated. 20th of January, Khojaly massacre, and the role that Russians played in both. Was it a mistake to allow Russians back in? Who in Baku genuinely thinks that Russians can be peacekeepers, especially since we're looking at the war in Ukraine and what they're doing in Ukraine, how they're sending the quote-unquote peacekeepers from Karabakh to fight on Ukrainian front as part of the occupying army. In hindsight, right now, looking back, and I'm not asking you to criticize the government or the president, but was it a mistake to let the Russians back in?
Well, if we are talking about those issues, we should remember many elements from November 2020. Frankly speaking, we have to remember that Russian presence in the region was not the first choice for Azerbaijan. First, there was some talks with the back then president of the United States, with Mr. Trump, if you remember those times. And he said that, well, Europeans and particularly Norwegians and the Northern Europeans, they should their troops. And the Scandinavian country representative came out said that we heard about it first time. So then when planned to attract some forces from the United States and some forces from Europe failed, Russia left there like only after that Russian, let's say, troops entering the region became reality. We should not remember that the European Union was not 2 years ago. There was not that big political will to send the troops or to send some civilian mission to the region. Like today, the situation is a bit different. So we should not judge what happened 2 years ago by today's standards. Today's situation is a bit different. Yes, many countries, they are willing to send their civilian missions to the region, but not in November 2020. Let's not forget about that. So I know a few things. I'm not going to say publicly them, but it's we should not remember about those issues. So the second part of your question is that, was it right to allow even any troops into Karabakh?
Yes, a country that claims it's winning the war, because there was a big deal made out of our victory and how we resolve the problem once and for all. 2 years have passed. Aray Karutyunyan is still in Karabakh. So what kind of victory was that if the victorious nation ended with Russian occupation? I'm sorry, but I'm trying to understand that still.
Okay, you're absolutely right that for the last 2 years the situation changed. But the thing is, it was not. This is not. I don't think that this is not how it was envisioned in the night. That the place, like for example, even like the Turkish-Russian center, when this the Turkish monitoring center emerged in Karabakh, still the purpose of that. So it seems that what was envisioned in November 2020 and what we have now is a bit different. So you should not judge the developments taking place in November 2020 by today's standards. So should any troops appear in Karabakh? Back then, United Nations Security Council resolution on Azerbaijan losing right over the governance of the Karabakh Armenians, that was something that was out there. So it was clear that...
I'm sorry, I can remind you of 3 other resolutions of the United Nations that nobody gave a damn about for 30 years. Why is that resolution that important then?
Well, their resolutions, sometimes they get implemented immediately. So there are some resolutions they not get implemented for 30 years. But
did you think they were going to send troops if they couldn't send peacekeepers? Did you really think they're going to send troops to fight the government of Azerbaijan in Karabakh?
The issue was that Azerbaijan wanted to show that it doesn't want to do any ethnic cleansing. So not back then, but look, how the things developed in Kosovo since things starts from 1992, and gradually it emerged to the point that at some point they said so. Were like at that time, no, but the things that was the beginning of something that something disastrous could take place. So that is why there were certain developments taking place in that regard also. So Azerbaijan wanted to show that it has no intention of ethnic cleansing. Azerbaijan wanted to show that ethnic cleansing of Karabakh Azerbaijanis took place in the late 1980s and the early 1990s, and Azerbaijan doesn't want to repeat that. So that was a message that back then Azerbaijan was willing to send. And let's not forget that back then Azerbaijan also, with no use of military means, got back Laçın, Kelbecer, Ağdam, so those areas. And it's like being implemented. It was something for Azerbaijan. So
Okay.
now we're talking about the Zengezur corridor in Azerbaijan, but Zengezur corridor was the ninth point in the agreement. There were other points that were somehow active. So that's why there were many issues, many sensitive issues. So the developments taking place in November 2020 and how we perceive the reality right now is completely different stuff.
So if you looked at
Since
it, if you knew everything you know now back in 2020, would you still agree personally? Like if somebody asked you, if I asked you, do you think letting Russians back in is a good idea? Would you still say yes?
what was the alternative option then?
Well, I don't understand how we went from, Russian quote unquote peacekeepers. I cannot even say Russian peacekeepers in one sentence with a straight face without laughing. But how we went from that to the United Nations resolution. Oh, okay, I understand what you're trying to say. Okay. Our visitors, our viewers today are returning me back to the events in the region. May I read one comment for you, please? This
Yes.
is a comment from our viewer, Eldar Aliyev. How come Vardanyan left and came back to Karabakh? I know you're disputing that he did, but let's presume he did. How come Vardanyan left and came back to Karabakh if there are so many protesters? If Vardanyan could come back, how can we know that protesters can control the transportation of landmines? In other words, this brings us to a very salient point. What is the point of these protests other than, in my view, again, I'm looking at everything from Washington. Nothing but the embarrassment to the government of Azerbaijan is coming from all this. Nothing but strengthening the Armenian narrative that Azerbaijanis are trying to ethnically cleanse, scare, conduct a psychological pressure on the Armenians in Karabakh to make them all leave. If there is any other message that the government of Azerbaijan is trying to send, I don't understand this. And if Vardanyan, somebody like Vardanyan, could leave and then come back as they please, what is that protest for? First of all. Secondly, these protesters cannot at all control what's inside the Russian, quote-unquote, peacekeepers' vehicles, military vehicles belonging to the Russian Federation. They cannot stop them. They cannot check them. Why are they there? What are they looking for? What are they trying to check?
Okay, first of all, again, my stand on the issue, and if there is some questions to the government representatives, I believe that from time to time they came to your show. You can ask those questions to him. But it's also that if you want to address that question, it clearly shows that there is no blockade. Any person can get out and any person can get in. So there is no blockade.
Okay, there is no blockade. So what the protest is for? I know you're not making this. Please, let me allow this. Allow me to say this. I know this is not your decision. I know you have no control over what's going on there. But I'm trying to understand what you, as an observer, you're looking at it. You're an analyst. What do you see? Maybe I'm seeing something wrong, and I'm allowing you to change my mind because I've changed my mind many, many times before. So, if there is no blockade, but the presence of these people lets Armenians paint that picture of a blockade, then why are they there to begin with? I mean, do you think they should withdraw?
But, okay, the thing is, one person hidden somewhere within the car, if that he really left Karabakh and then came back, one person hiding somewhere going, and then landmines coming through that, or some big weapons coming, it's different thing. But if that is your question, I believe it's a legitimate question. So it shows that Baku might step up the game, saying that, look, I could not control the exit and entrance of this dangerous person, so I am going to do something more. So that is why I believe that in upcoming weeks, Baku might say that I'm going to establish the fully equipped border checkpoint, custom checkpoint. So, and it can be what happened with the Vardanyan can be an excellent pretext for that, for Baku.
Okay. So again, going back to the Armenians in Karabakh, I'm putting myself in their place. We talked about empathy.
Yes.
And I do believe I have the capacity for empathy. Of course, I don't like the fact that Armenians of Karabakh are fighting against my people with arms in their hands, and the whole world is supporting them for the last 30 years.
Yes.
But, let's look at the situation from their eyes for a second. Not everybody there is fighting against the government of Azerbaijan. Not everybody there wants to kill all of us. Okay, let's admit that.
Yeah.
But even those people who in their heart are already beginning to think about dialogue, you mentioned really good examples at the beginning of the program. Isn't their case undermined? Are they not more afraid to talk about it aloud in their family, with their friends, with their trusted ones? Because people will say, "Are you crazy? Look at what they're doing to us on the road. They're not letting food in. They're not letting medications in. Our children are dying. This and that and the other." That's what propaganda is saying. That's not what Ismail Jalilov is saying. That is what the Armenian propaganda here in Washington, in Brussels, in Paris, and everywhere else in the world is saying. What I'm trying to understand is, Ahmad, you live in Azerbaijan. You know the kitchen of the Azerbaijani politics better than I do. I've been here for 26 years, most of my life. Do you think that at some point when people in the government of Azerbaijan see that something is a mistake, do they have enough courage to say to the president, you know what, maybe this tactic is a mistake. Maybe we should walk it back a little bit. Is it possible at all? Is it done?
I don't sense a feeling that anyone in Baku is saying that this tactics is wrong. And frankly speaking, let me put it this way: in my how I commented on this issue, the very first weeks of this developments taking place, when I was asked about it, I said that this is something. If you compare it to the military escalation, it's a very mild pressure from Azerbaijan. So each time when there is some hard times in peace process, each time when there is no, let's say, possible solution, diplomatic solution on the at the negotiation table, we would witness military escalation. We would witness deaths. We would witness something more disastrous. Now we witness a protest. So, and there is in terms of the blockade, I would say that right now there are many Azerbaijan social media users. They are even ordering foods from Karabakh restaurants to Karabakh residents. You can say that. So comparing like what we have now, like the fail at the negotiation table, usually that would transform into some escalation, military escalation. Now it transformed into some protest movement. So my question to you, should Karabakh Armenians see the difference in this issue or not? So that's also the main. If everything depends on the perspective, everything depends on how we review this stuff. So that is why there are many other components in this standoff. Great standoff on Lachen Road, let me put it this way.
So you're saying that protest is a much better way to show that Azerbaijan is unhappy than starting a war, a military escalation?
I would say that definitely there is no death. Definitely there is no death, and definitely there is no death in among Karabakh Armenians. There is enough food, and Azerbaijan, I believe, that can organize that, because there is enough food carried from Armenia to Karabakh, and Azerbaijan also can provide that. So, and there is for the last 2 months and 4 days, nobody talks about the scarcity of, some people talk about that, but we don't see any, let's say, large scale deaths because of the lack of food, etc. So this is also another side of the issue.
right to this issue, Eldar Aliyev is asking, why doesn't the Azerbaijani government send to Armenians in Karabakh the humanitarian help? So nobody would say Azerbaijanis want to kill all Armenians in Karabakh. To your knowledge, was there a request for humanitarian help? Because Armenians are asking for humanitarian assistance. Does Azerbaijan provide? Is it ready to provide? And on the other hand, I'm trying to understand the logic. Why partially block the road? I'm not saying blockade, but stand on the road. And on the other hand, why would Azerbaijan send help on the other hand, if all this help is coming from Armenia? Again, I'm sorry if my questions are repeatedly, on the same topic. I am trying to understand this logic, and I am sure a lot of people are trying to understand it.
Yes. Okay, let me put it this way. I see a certain fatigue over what's happening right now, and I believe that there is definitely a certain fatigue in some circles also. So probably what happened with the Vardanian after Vardanian emergence in Karabakh once more. So we can sense that Baku is going to take a bit more radical steps in probably coming days or weeks. But why Azerbaijan is not sending the humanitarian aid? I believe that Azerbaijan can do that and should do that, frankly speaking. That would be one of the great peace-building attempts from Azerbaijan's side. At the same time, I also see that Baku believes that once it sends food, it might be accused on food poisoning. It might be accused on many other issues. So that is why I believe that now Karabakh Armenians getting food from Armenia and Azerbaijan allowing them food to pass, it's also like quite a valid. Let's say this decision also has some validity. But I would love to see Azerbaijan sending those troops, those foods to Karabakh Armenians, and I believe that this could be one of the greatest peace-building moves in the history of the Armenian-Azerbaijan peace process.
My visitors, our guests, are asking about the normalization of relations by Armenia because and I will find this comment and I will show it during during your answer. So let me ask you the following, as close to the question as I remember. Armenians, after the war, after the defeat, they voted for Pashinyan. It was the choice of the Armenian people that they made at the ballot box, which to me, maybe I'm again reading everything wrong, to me it meant enough of the war, even if you lost the war, we're voting for you, so, the peace and normalization would come. So what is going on right now? What do people in Azerbaijan think of it, first of all? Like when you look at the results of Pashinyan's victory in Armenia, what did you think of it? What message did it send to you personally? What message did it send to the people of Azerbaijan, do you think? And again, the actions of our government, the Azerbaijani government, are they making it easy or are they making it worse for those who voted for Pashinyan right after the war?
Ismail, right after the elections, I was in interactive conferences, and I mentioned that it's one of the biggest peace messages to Azerbaijan from Armenia. It showed that Armenia signals that whatever happened in the past, it's in the past. Let's live together. So that's why Pashinyan's victory was one of the biggest peace messages to Azerbaijan. Back then, my Armenian counterparts, some of them, they didn't like that. They try to bring the other perspectives to the issue. But I believe that what happened back then, it is again, it's one of the biggest peace building messages in the process. Is Azerbaijan punishing Pashinyan followers for voting to Pashinyan? Well, the thing is, Pashinyan is a unique case in Armenian history. There will be no other, there was, and there will be no other Armenian leader who is less trusted by Moscow than Pashinyan. So Baku sees that. Baku sees that Pashinyan is different and is willing to work on that. But also, Pashinyan changing his mind quite frequently. Like, recognizing Azerbaijan territorial integrity in Prague, then coming back and saying that it's not about Karabakh, or when I would say that in diplomatic circles it was quite a big backsplash when after signing that deal, after signing that statement, some Armenian reps say that Almaty Declaration is not about Karabakh. So it was like there was a great achievement in Prague, and somebody took it and destroyed it, right? So this kind of steps from Armenian side is seen as this hectic movement from Armenian side is not appreciated by Baku at all. So that is why there are certain decisions, the hard decisions that Baku is taking. It's mostly trying to, let's say, to reply or to take the actions based on the decisions Pashinyan administration takes in that days, So like the Pashinyan administration, they change so fast. So that is why it might be interesting to see how it's going to move on in the future.
I am curious as to, Pashinyan and our visitors also discussing that his rhetoric is not very consistent, that it's very haphazard, that it can go in different directions even within 24 hours.
Oh, they answered that question then. Unfortunately, I don't see those comments. If they answered that question, like, I would go on that issue on Lex, yeah.
Yeah. What I'm asking is it possible that Pashinyan is also trying to respond to different pressures coming from inside the Armenian society? We do understand from what we know that the Armenian defense ministry is quite under Russian control. I mean, this is probably not a secret for anybody. We also know that there is a big pro-Russian opposition group in Armenia, and we've seen their demonstrations as well. They even demonstrated against the war in Ukraine, not in many numbers, not in such numbers that they supported the war, the Ukrainian side in the war, but still, there are those elements. So what I'm trying to ask, do people in Baku understand the nuances of the Armenian politics insofar as, since Pashinyan was elected by the people, he can also be removed from office by the people, and sometimes he has to make, certain statements or pronouncements to appease various conflicting groups within the Armenian society. We don't have that in our society, but what I'm trying to say is, do we take that into account?
I can tell you one thing for sure. The level of the political discussions in Azerbaijani media sphere for the last 2 years, in terms of the quality, that changed drastically. Armenia was one of the well-researched countries in Azerbaijan, and after 2020 Karabakh War, Armenia, like I can open even like a small secrets, right? Before 2020 Karabakh War, you would consider research in Armenia if you read the news and knew about the development first. Nowadays, I'm not the first person who knows about those developments first, because I have a lot of even ordinary people, friends and colleagues. Whenever something happens, I might be in an interview like this one, and then when I'm out of the interview, I see the dozens of the messages coming to my, the text message I'm receiving, what's happening in Armenia. Now, Azerbaijan audience, the Telegram channel booms that we witnessed in Azerbaijan, the Twitter boom that we witnessed in Azerbaijan. So that is why it shows that now not only, let's say, decision makers, but also the public is reading whatever the news is coming from Armenia. And frankly speaking, for the last couple of years, I'm reading the news from Armenia. I'm taking opening some Armenian news source in Armenian language and Google translating that, because I believe that I want to understand the whole perspective. So that's how we want to. Yes, exactly. That's the level now we want to understand what's happening within Armenia, etc. So that is why, like, for the last 2 years, again, the level, the quality of the political discussions on Armenia in Azerbaijani media sphere, that increased. Like even your show, like I would say that for the last 2 years, you covering this issue, increased there is much more discussions on these elements than before. Or you can compare all the YouTube channels, you can see that the interest raising. Or I would say that the developments are taking place. They are so fast. You have something new over the week. So that is why there is a need to research to understand. But I also agree with you that there are certain issues that only a person constantly being in touch with the international community, with the experts from the wider region, we can they understand slightly more than the rest. There is the when you meet a person in person, that feeling of empathy that give you much more information than just reading the news. Also, I believe that I'm going to back to the earlier comments on that. In Azerbaijan, we should learn the distinct diaspora narratives from Pashinyan administration narratives. But that is something that we are not used to do, and we see it as a whole. Even like for the last 2 years, I am trying to struggle to show that even within Armenian diaspora, there are Russian Armenians, there are Armenians living in the United States, Armenians living in France, and there Armenians living in the Middle East. Their narrative is totally different. So, like trying to understand the differences in those narratives is quite important. And we started, I believe that for the last this change that takes place in Azerbaijani media arena for the last 2 years, that shows that we are moving toward that. The soft power component is becoming more and more in Azerbaijani foreign policy, analytics, etc.
Okay. Let me read a couple of comments. Anik James Krikorian again. I increasingly refer to Pashinyan as quote-unquote consistently inconsistent and predictably unpredictable. Kurban Said says, even though Pashinyan is inconsistent and unpredictable, I truly believe that he is the only person we at last can sign a peace agreement with. Maybe I am wrong, but this is my gut feeling. Is there an expectation in Baku? Yes, go ahead, please.
I agree with both comments, and I believe that I know on exposition on that issue, and also like what Kurban said. So that's why I said that Pashinyan is there was no leader in Armenia left trusted by Moscow, and there will be no other leader. So that's why this is a unique case. So Azerbaijan understands that.
Do you think that Russia will allow us to sign a peace treaty? The reason I'm asking, you probably understand where I'm coming from. If Azerbaijan and Armenia are at peace, if we give each other, mutual guarantees for peace and stability and security, if we open communications, etc., there will be no logical reason for Russia to remain in the region, and both countries sooner or later will understand that it's time for Russians to go home. Do you think Russia genuinely wants peace between our two countries?
Russia wants peace on the Russian terms. So even the peace between Armenia and Azerbaijan should be signed under Russian terms. And it means that if Armenia and Azerbaijan want delimitation demarcation, the Russia should be arbitrary in between them. So the maps from Moscow should be taken as the main map, and the Moscow is deciding which side is right and which side is wrong. If there are the corridors to exist, I believe that Russia wants to control those corridors and say that you cannot trust Armenians and Azerbaijanis controlling their own corridors. So that's what should be Russia controlling. And Ruben Vardanyan is also a clear demonstration of the Russian will. It shows that when Azerbaijan started talking to Karabakh Armenians, Ruben Vardanyan was introduced as a tap in between Armenians and Azerbaijanis in Karabakh, that the old dialogue should take place through Russian appointed person in between. So that is why I believe that Russia understands that it made a big mistake in 2011. In April of 2016, Russia had all chances to keep the process under its own control. Russia missed those chances. Russian diplomacy understands that. So now I believe that there is an understanding that they have to allow Armenia and Azerbaijan to sign a peace deal, but in all points, it should say that Russia is the guarantee of it.
Mm-hmm.
So if Russia is not guarantee of it, I don't think it's going to be problematic for Russia. But Russia wants to say that Russia is going to decide who broke the peace, and once Russia decides that somebody broke the peace, Russia should intervene. So that's the Russian vision of the peace deal.
We've talked more than an hour. Are you tired?
Not at all.
Okay.
If you want to continue, there is no problem. But it's also like that. Now, for the first 30 minutes, we talked about the general issues, and even we talked about the Turkey. Now we are talking more about the specific issues, and I believe that it's also like the let's say thinking together on the problem. So that's why I enjoy it. No problem.
I appreciate it. Okay, I do have a couple of questions.
Yes.
Speaking of, my last question, do you think the West, the United States, I don't like the term the West because it sort of presumes that Western Europe and Europe in general and the United States kind of see eye to eye on that issue. So let me ask you this. When you look at the situation from Baku, what is the position of the United States like? What is the position of Europe like? Are they similar? Can we say the West? Can we generalize? And secondly, do you think that in Europe and in America, they see Azerbaijan and Armenia and South Caucasus in general as Russia's backyard and sort of have a laissez-faire, like hands-off approach and tell Russia, you know what, you deal with them, these are yours, you deal with them, you make sure they don't kill each other, etc., etc. What is the view from Baku on all this?
Again, too many questions, frankly speaking. So if I understand, answer all of these questions like it's going to take a much longer time. So let me bullet point those certain issues. What happened after 2020 Karabakh War? I noticed that now the perception is that Turkey has much more control over the region than it used to have. So that is why now this understanding that its Russian backyard is gone, but still there are some power centers that they are willing to work with Russia on this in this context. But I can tell you, like I had a fun exchange with some friends who accused Azerbaijan being under Turkey. So after 2020 Karabakh War, so my comeback back then was that okay, all this time like there was accusation that Azerbaijan is under Russia. Now you all like that suddenly changing and saying that it's under Turkey. And when Moscow Declaration was signed in early 2022. That was my comeback to many of my friends, saying that, look, now the balance is out there once more. So when Azerbaijan got criticized because of signing the Moscow Declaration, I said, look, still, it's a great demonstration that if you're looking at one positive side in this issue, it's clear demonstration that Azerbaijan can choose, can still balance on some issues. So that shows that capacity what Azerbaijan has. And also now, if before we had to, if local researchers, in order to understand that certain relations between like the EU-Russia relations, United States-Russia relations, now we have to also understand there's developments taking place between some European countries and the Turkey, because that affects our region also. So this concept that the region is Russian background, I believe that it's not true anymore. There is a West, like this concept, does it exist in Azerbaijani narrative? Well, again, it's part of this issue, for the last 2 years, Azerbaijani media narratives, Azerbaijani public narratives, they changed a lot. If before 2020 Karabakh War, Azerbaijani media would use a lot the term West. Nowadays, I would say that, and I was against then back then I was against it. I try to show the differences because as a researcher who is doing the research on that direction, so I was trying to show even like that some countries in the European Union might have some different stand on the issue. Nowadays, Azerbaijani media tries to differentiate European Parliament from other European institutions. So you can understand that the qualitative change taking place in Azerbaijani media for the last 2 years, how they started like the vision about what's happening out there. So that is why, putting it short, both Azerbaijani understanding of the European Union and the United States is in the process of it's in the process of development. It's developing. It becomes more nuanced, I would say. Also, I would say that this European Union and the United States countries, their understanding of the region becomes also suddenly we became a top priority on the international agenda. So we 2020 Karabakh War that put South Caucasus to the quite high point. So that is why many people, if it was like some gray zone between Russia, Iran, and Turkey, and only a few people would understand the region. Nowadays, I believe that the number of the researchers who wants to understand, also tries to understand Azerbaijan narratives on the issue, it's drastically increased.
Do you think people understand Azerbaijani narratives better, or do you think it's all pro-Armenian? Because what I see on Twitter and what I read in newspapers and media, it feels like, and one of our guests actually says that it's almost impossible to say anything in defense of Azerbaijan because the attacks from the Armenian lobby force some magazines like Rolling Stone not to publish those articles online, even to that extent.
True, but I said it's in process. I did not say that it fully took place. It's finished process. Not at all. It's a long process. So I can tell you, like a few months ago, I was in an international event. I was sitting. I believe it was lunchtime. I was sitting and waiting just to crowd to become less. And I suddenly had one of the organizers, head of the organizations, sitting next to me, and he was quite a well representative, head of the quite a well-known organization, international organization. He came to me and they said that, look, all this time I'm hearing all about the Armenian, I'm hearing always Armenian perspective. What's Azerbaijan perspective on this issue? So he came and sat next to me and intentionally asked that question. So that is the issue, like that he's surrounded by this, let's say, non-Azerbaijani narrative. And now, at some point, people will understand, okay, what's Azerbaijani side stand on that? Because once you, even if you criticize, at the same time, you want to hear something from how Azerbaijan side sees it. So that's why it's in the process. And the very first thing, if you want to look for the positive sides of the European civilian mission emerging, coming to South Caucasus, I would say that means that those countries who are going to send their people to Armenian Azerbaijani border, they are going to at least follow the news more carefully from the region. What's happening with Iran, what's happening with Russia right now, what's happening. It's like another example, if you allow me, I'm taking much more time. When it's also like from outside of the region, when Iranian drones end up in Ukraine, many European colleagues back then, and Ukrainian colleagues, I would say, that they were super surprised, because from from that perspective, Iran is somewhere far away, and what Iran has to do with the whole Ukraine. But only for Azerbaijanis, Armenians, and the Georgians back there, because we are living in between them, right? So for us, it's like it's so natural to understand why it took place. I'm talking about the very first days of the news emerging there. And that showed that sometimes people in the South Caucasus, their knowledge about the geopolitics, their the perception about the developments taking place in South Caucasus and around South Caucasus is very important. I believe that in terms of the geopolitics and international relations, the researchers from South Caucasus, they are much more experienced ones, even like compared to anyone around the world, because we are situated in a region that it demands you always be on alert, always check your surroundings, always understand what's happening around you. So that is why I believe that now it's time for outsiders discover Azerbaijan and the South Caucasus, and Azerbaijan nations in the South Caucasus discovered the outsiders. And again, for the last 2 years, there was quite a dramatic change taking place within Azerbaijan, in Azerbaijani media, and I would say that in Europe and United States.
You know what I don't understand here is I quite often refer to ANCA, the Armenian National Congress of America, and show their tweets. It's like they're always beating this drum of, you know, Christian Armenia and Muslim Azerbaijan, Christian Muslim, Christian Muslim. But somehow it is not very known here in the United States or elsewhere that Iran is quite a friendly nation to Armenia. Do you think that Azerbaijan is doing all it can in not conducting caviar diplomacy, forgive me, but, you know, doing the right thing in terms of public relations? There are public relations companies all over the world. There are techniques that have been known for for decades. Do you think that the government of Azerbaijan is spending the right amount of effort at the right time and at the right place? I know we hear a lot about the Azerbaijani diaspora. You know, as a diaspora, an Azerbaijani diaspora, and I can tell you lots of stories. Maybe when we meet, I will. But do you think the government of Azerbaijan is putting the effort at the right place and at the right time and in the right amount to make the realities known? Because even in America, people don't know that Armenia is Russia's military ally.
Okay, first of all, when those issues emerge, I show pictures when there is the religious context brought in religious narrative brought in the context of the Armenian-Azerbaijani war in 2020, I always show them the flags that were in Baku, Azerbaijan back in 2020 in the streets of Baku. So those were flags of Azerbaijan, Turkey, Pakistan, and then you would always have flags of Israel and Ukraine next to them. It was a unique combination.
Even in 2020, you would have a Ukrainian flag.
Yes, especially in 2020, you would have that flag. If you Google you would see a lot of cars of the 2020. So that shows that that those flags, they definitely destroy the religious component in this the narrative. And I believe that anyone who's been to Baku, talked to the people, they have much more clear understanding on what's happening in this regard, and also the relations with Iran. Now, many, like even Ruben Vardan talks about Iran much more than it talks about Russia. So it shows that, and Iran did verbally attack Azerbaijan, believing that it will be enough for Azerbaijan to make more like the more restrained, let's say, Azerbaijan become more restrained in its foreign policy, but it didn't work out.
Was that because of an embassy in Israel, or was there another reason?
I will come back to that. I will explain to that. But first, there was a verbal attack toward Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan did not make its foreign policy any kind of restraint. Then it was military drills taking place in the border. And then Azerbaijan had the military drills, and in the light of the tensions between Iran and Azerbaijan, Azerbaijan decided to open the embassy in Israel. And then Iran believed that what it did, what the signals that it sent to Azerbaijan was not enough. So it should make a more clear statement that it doesn't like what Azerbaijan is doing in the region. So, and on the exact same day, there were demonstrations taking place in Tehran, in the next street in favor of Armenia, and then the attack to the Azerbaijan embassy happened. So that is why, yes, the religious component does not exist in this context at all. So we have to understand. And your last question about that, is Azerbaijan doing enough? No, Armenia is very much soft power focused country. Azerbaijan is hard power focused country. Azerbaijan believes that it has upper hand in the hard power, so it feels like they can use that. So that is why for Azerbaijan, like I believe that for Baku, it's saying that we have the real power, we have the real resources. So I fully agree with you that there is underestimation of the potential of the soft power in Baku, and I believe that I am trying to increase like that to show that there is the soft power can increase the cost, the reputational cost, the diplomatic cost. So that is why Azerbaijan being involved in this issue might be a cost saving in terms of the reputation and diplomacy. And I believe that again, Azerbaijan itself is in transformation. So what we have here, like what we had here in Azerbaijan 2 years ago, and what we have now, it's a completely different environment, I would say. I believe that now Azerbaijan became much more nuanced toward its politics, policy toward like how it should work with the European Union institutions, with the United States. But again, there is a long, long way ahead. So we are at the beginning of this road. But we should not deny that for the last 2 years there were a lot of qualitatively a lot of positive change in this term in Azerbaijan.
All right. You know, every time I speak to Armenians or every time I listen to the rhetoric here in Washington, a lot is made out of the fact that Armenia is a democracy and Azerbaijan is not. So my question to you is that taken into consideration? You know, not we can discuss the quality of Armenian democracy. I just don't think it's worth our time, and it's not our topic today. Um, is there an understanding in Baku that if Karabakh is incorporated, finally, once and for all, there are democratic reforms in Azerbaijan that are necessary not only for the people of Karabakh, you know, the Armenian community of Karabakh, allow self-rule, etc., you know, allow people to elect people who govern them, etc., not the ones sent from Baku, but also for the rest of Azerbaijan. Because how is it going to look if you allow Armenians to have more freedom than the rest of the people living in Azerbaijan? So is there an understanding that something will have to change, do you think? Is anything changing in that regard?
Smile. 2020 Karabakh War was not the end. It was the beginning of a lot of the developments taking place. You know, suddenly Azerbaijan started looking to the world in much different lenses. Azerbaijan's role in the world geopolitics. Suddenly, Azerbaijan became a point, the connecting, much more important point connecting. Well, it did not become like the understanding of that. It became much more obvious that Azerbaijan can play a much bigger geopolitical role. And it launched a lot of processes in foreign policy decision making, in information policy, and many other issues. So how it will transform into the Azerbaijan internal dynamics, how Armenian component is going to affect the Azerbaijani political build-up or political structure in the future. We have started in 2020, we have started much, let's say, dramatic change, much bigger change, and we are in the process. So frankly speaking, there are many issues I believe that is going to emerge as a result of these processes, but it should be homegrown. It should be society deciding on that. Once Azerbaijan feels that there is external pressure on certain issues, that's Azerbaijan is so experienced in closing doors on many initiatives when it feels that it's something born outside of the country, not inside of the country. So again,
what is the understanding inside of the country, let's say to freedom of speech, for instance, for critical journalism? I'm asking as a critical journalist.
yes.
What do people think in Azerbaijan? Will Ismail Jalilov be allowed to come and work in Azerbaijan and criticize the government without the fear for his freedom or his health or anything else?
Ismail, I would invite you to come to Azerbaijan. I am inviting you to come to Azerbaijan. So, but if you are like talking about the people who can, the decision makers, frankly speaking, it's another issue. But I would love to see you in Baku, and I would love to. I believe that that you are going to be welcomed, and what happened in the last couple of years, that your YouTube broadcasting, you have much more fans here, and I believe that they would love to sit and talk to you and drink Azerbaijani tea and discuss on many interesting issues, frankly speaking. So I believe that you have quite a large number of the fans in Azerbaijan, so that's why don't underestimate the capacity of those people.
No, I don't underestimate the capacity of those people. What I'm trying to say is, will I be able, not only me personally, okay, let's say somebody who doesn't have any fans, is it okay to criticize the government? Will there be an understanding, homegrown, not brought by a foreign power or a foreign governmental or non-governmental organization, an understanding amongst us Azerbaijanis that it is okay to disagree. It is okay to say that something is wrong. It is okay to say, I don't like this decision of the government or even the president. Do you think that time will come, or is it coming closer?
Look, if you can prove that, I believe that in many cases, if a journalist can prove that, and the biggest problem was in Azerbaijan always was that it is homegrown or outside, but especially in the context of the developments taking place with Iran or etc. So Azerbaijan is quite sensitive that if it is the messages, they are like the grown a bit outside of the country. If you can prove that your messages it's a homegrown, there are a certain group of the people and you express their minds, and I believe that there should be no problem in that. So that's why I believe that every person should be able to criticize, and that's the essential side of the life that helps to grow. And that is why we all should be in this boat to let that if there is some problems, we should tell to each other and grow together. So I believe that's the philosophy behind all of this criticism. And again, but if the Azerbaijan government, look, Azerbaijan is a country situated between Russia, Iran, and Turkey. So it's quite sensitive that somebody might use it. So that is why, like that differentiating that agenda is very important for people in Baku and Azerbaijan. If you can differentiate that, I don't expect any problem.
Okay. Ahmad, it was pleasure to talk to you. It was pleasure to meet you virtually, and I truly hope that that tea that you promised, I will remind you of that one day. I'll knock on your door
Yes.
when you least expect it in Baku, and I hope that happens.
Yes.
I appreciate your time today, and I truly hope this is not the last time we spoke. We may meet again and speak Azerbaijani or Russian, because our audience is so different. We're trying to juggle 3 languages. Whether we can or cannot, whether it's working or not, time will tell.
No,
But again,
no
thank
problem.
you.
if you see value in my comments and you believe that your audience should hear those messages, I would love to talk with you on all of these issues in all languages that I know. So there should be no problem on talking on these issues. And it was a great pleasure. And I believe that we are unusually longer. So I believe that like the 1 hour and 40 minutes. So it shows that like there was an interest and there was interesting questions that so it took a bit longer, and it source of pleasure for me also. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much. You answered your own question. Yes, I do see value in your comments because we spoke for close to 140. Otherwise, we wouldn't
Yes.
speak so much. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, our guest today was Ahmad Alili. I'll read his regalia so I don't mess everything up. I usually do. He's a director of the Caucasus Policy Analysis Center, researcher in international public policy and regional issues, regional security in South Caucasus. He also asked me to convey to you that he's a peace building initiatives participant, and I believe that informs his position and his comments today. As always, I do appreciate your time, and I appreciate the fact that all 20 of you watched us today. I know that for many people, English is not an accessible language in our region. I'm sorry, and that's very, very sad. I wish more people spoke English in Azerbaijan, Armenia, Georgia, elsewhere, so we could understand each other. We could speak to each other directly without the Russian media presence. Sadly, lately meaning all my life, we've been talking to each other in Russian and through the Russian media, and I think it's wrong. We should start speaking directly. I appreciate your time, and if you can help our channel to grow by sharing our content, liking our content, and even writing comments once this video is released, I would really appreciate it. I want to know you more. I want to know my English-speaking audience more. Please do comment in the comments section under this video where you're watching us from. This helps us enormously to understand who you are and where you are. From Washington, D.C., I'm Ismail Jalilov. Thank you very much. Have a good evening. Bye.